Welcome back. Today is part 2 of Master Real Estate Negotiation or Get Left Behind. We gave you guys a lot of great notes yesterday. I always like to start out the podcast every single day by reminding you, if you want our notes, go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. And I laugh because so many of you ask us for our notes and you message us and you email us. And we always just tell you to subscribe to the newsletter. So I'm asking you now to save the effort of having to tell you to go to the newsletter by just doing it in the first place. Our notes are designed to obviously give you all the drill down on what we're presenting that particular day. And you're supposed to then ideally use that for your own information, own education, and then you could use it on social. You could use it when our notes when talking with buyers and sellers. You can use this obviously for educating other real estate agents in your team or your brokerage. However you're going to use it is there for you to use. And please just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to the newsletter. We're also including a lot of unique newsletter only content, a lot of videos and things like that. Again, harrisrealestatedaily.com. And all you got to do is drop in your email address. And remember, when you do, then you got to pop over to your email and you got to confirm that you want the subscription. We're only going to be sending this to folks that actually want it, and you have to double opt in. I think our mailing list now, our email is over, I know it's like 20 or 22,000 or something like that. And what's really cool, if you guys know anything about emails and newsletters, we have usually over 50% that open it on it every single day. So we have a very highly engaged newsletter list, which I really appreciate you guys, because you're the ones that open our newsletter, the ones that subscribe, those of you that listen to us every day, and there's thousands of you. You guys keep us motivated to keep on doing these podcasts every single day.
That's right. You are our people.
You are our people. Exactly.
Okay. So,
and we love you too.
That's right. Mastering real estate negotiations so you don't get left behind. Yesterday, we talked about knowing what you can about the house and knowing about the seller. Today, we're going to talk about the buyer's priorities. These are things to find out before you start negotiating. Whether you represent the buyer or the seller, knowing what drives the buyer will give you the advantage. And remember, you get the buyer and seller pre-qualification scripts and your negotiating checklist as part of Premier Coaching. So let's focus on the buyer for a second. And I'm not going to go into the scripts. We do have buyer scripts that help you with this. This is kind of a script snippet. Number one, the buyer's interest level in the house. Is this house that you're going to negotiate on a must-have or just one of many that they're thinking about? How do they rate their interest on a scale of 1 to 10? And if it's not a 10, what would it take to be a 10?
Well, you're using notes that we give them in Premier Coaching, but
Yes.
we can talk about that a little later.
Yeah, that's right. But are they like dying to have the house and they'll do anything for it? Maybe your strategy is different than if they're maybe an investor saying, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out,
Well,
right?
but you are bringing up something interesting. So especially when you're negotiating or representing a buyer, the negotiation process isn't just between the buyer and you and the seller and the listing agent. Really, when you're working with a buyer specifically, you're going to negotiate with that buyer. You personally have to negotiate with that buyer even before you show them the first house. And the negotiation really is, if you really want to drill down on it, it's a negotiation to find out what their level of motivation actually is. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, what's happening, and some of you are learning this the hard way, is most buyers are they're not, how many buyers are going to change their mind this year because interest rates go this way or that way? How many buyers are going to change their mind just because inventory goes this way or that way?
Yep.
So you've got to really make sure that the buyers you have are actually as motivated as they possibly can be.
Right. How into this are they?
Right. Because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a buyer that has to buy, because a buyer can always change their mind. A buyer can stay put. A buyer can stay renting. A buyer can put it off until next year. A buyer can, all these different things. Whereas, again, this is kind of going off topic, but it's important you guys understand this. A seller, that's the reason we always want you guys to lean into chasing sellers, because sellers and listings are where you create leverage, because you can give me an example of a seller that absolutely has to sell a house, has no choice but to sell a house. The list is endless. They have financial issues. They can't own two homes at once. They just lost their job, or they got a new job across the country. They need their equity. It's a legal issue, all these things. So when you're negotiating, and when you're trying to and negotiation starts with you deciding who you're going to work with. And just remember, there's no such thing as a buyer that absolutely has to transact. There are examples of sellers that have to transact. So when choosing which buyers you're going to work with, you've got to be really freaking picky. And one of the questions Julie just gave you was, and this is part of the buyer script that we give you as part of Premier Coaching, and this isn't the question, it's one of the many questions, because we really want you to be careful who you're working with. Otherwise, you're going to waste, frankly, an entire year working with a bunch of unmotivated buyers, and as soon as kids go back to school, or as soon as it's Halloween, they're going to say, well, we'll just wait until spring of next year.
Right.
Had that happen, dear listener? I bet you have. So, Mr. Buyer, if I were to show you the perfect house checked all the boxes, had, it's a great proximity to all the important things that you school, church, all the things you do on a regular basis. House didn't need a lot of work and it was priced right. And all the things, again, this is the house you were looking for. It's not perfect, but close to perfect. On a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. Buyer, with obviously 10 being you're ready to buy the house today, no questions asked, where would you rate yourself? If that buyer says anything other than a 10, which most of them will, and sometimes they're, you just got to really drill down. So they're going to say a 7. You're going to say 7. Congratulations, Bob. So let me ask you, what would it take for you to get to a 10? And you're going to hear then Bob's real issue that that he hasn't yet disclosed to anybody. Bob's waiting to decide whether he's going to take the first, manned voyage to Mars. He hasn't quite gotten his application in yet. Or Bob
hasn't even talked to a lender yet.
Exactly. Bob hasn't. It turns out the lender letter that he swore he has, he doesn't have. Turns, all these things. So you got to really, really start your negotiation with a buyer in particular when you consider whether you're going to work with them or not. Because, frankly, like I said, this is the art and the science of when you're going to be successful in real estate long term. You're going to have to learn to you're going to have to learn to ask the right questions so you can work with the right people who are actually going to be motivated enough to transact with you. There are a lot of great, well-meaning people out there who will be happy to waste your time, who will be happy to take all your nights and your weekends, happy for you to miss all of your family, events throughout the entire year, and then just basically ghost you and buy a house from somebody else. More than happy to do that. And this is the nicest going, church-going people, all the things. Okay, so you got to choose wisely by asking the right questions. Hopefully, I didn't overemphasize your point.
But yeah.
Well,
no,
but
it's true. It is true.
Yeah.
Most of our listeners that have been, transactional for more than 3 seconds have had something like that happen to them.
The unfortunate part is, and I'm thinking about all the new agents that are getting into the business this time of year, is that they're going to go to some, I'm just going to say the word, idiot, and the idiot's going to say, well, that's just part of the business.
That's right. You win some, you lose some.
You win some, you lose some, honey.
Yeah, unless you use a buyer pre-qualification script and get down to it and ask the real questions. Don't wait until you are burned and then you wander around in the wilds going, buyers are liars or something dumb like that. Buyers aren't liars. It's not their job to know how they're supposed to behave. They're supposed to be led by you, the real estate professional.
They don't know that they're not motivated. They're not thinking, well, I don't know if I'm really that motivated.
They just like to see houses.
You got to help them self-discover what their motivation is. This is called you being a professional, and this is the reason that one of the many, many reasons why you should join Premier Coaching. Next point, Julie.
Okay, now, one of the ways that you can find out, and you should always do this, of course, prior to negotiating, is how strong of a buyer are they? Tim talked a little bit about this. I'm going to talk about the financing. He was talking about motivation. What is their actual qualification? Are they cash buyer? Are they pre-approved? Are they pre-qualified? Have you actually called their lender? We're going to talk extensively about questions for the lender on tomorrow's podcast. But if they really are that qualified, will the lender call the listing agent and talk about how they're qualified? Do they actually have loan commitment? How strong of a borrower are they? And if they are all cash, do they have that proof of funds letter? And does it look, is it really legit or does it look boilerplate?
We're going to talk, again, Julie just, foreshadowed what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be giving you guys the overview of what we call the ultimate addendum, which is really the most powerful way for you to vet out whether the buyer or even your seller are qualified to transact. It goes far beyond the typical lender's pre-approval or pre-qualification letter. That's going to be on tomorrow's show, so make sure you listen. It's just going to be an overview because there's a lot of detail, and we keep the shows to around 30 minutes. So, just like today, we're not going to be able to go through all of our negotiation points, so make sure you get all of our points by going to harrisrealestatedaily.com and becoming a newsletter subscriber.
Okay, so staying on the buyer for a second, what is their contingency plan? What happens if they don't get this home? Are they in a month-to-month lease? Are they living in an RV? Are they at the end of their lease? Are they in corporate housing? What is the contingency plan? That's going to help you determine what your strategy is. Maybe they have one, maybe they don't. A lot of first-time buyers living with mom and dad, what's the deal?
Well, that's that's one of the questions you should ask. So, how long have you given yourself to find your next home? Well, rather the question that we give in the script is how long have you been looking, and this is when you first meet the buyer. How long have you been looking for your home? Well, I've been looking for the last 90 days. 90 days? Congratulations. Have you seen anything you've liked? And then you're going to find out all kinds of things, just with that one question. And the best answer is, oh, I did see a house I really liked. And then you're going to say, because you're following our script, oh, well, I mean, which house was it? Where did you see it? And they'll say, well, I just went through it last Sunday on an open house. And yeah, it was a fantastic house. I loved everything about it. Now you're going to think, well, why didn't you buy it? Or why didn't the agent holding the house open offer to write the contract for you? But you're going to follow the script. And the next question is, so Mr. Buyer, sounds like that's a great house for you. Let me check to see if it's available. And if it were available, would you still want to purchase it? And the buyer will say yes. And then what you do is you shut up, you set up the showing, you go over to the house, you show it to the buyer, and then you write the purchase contract and you get paid. That's the process.
That does happen.
It
all
happens.
the time.
And
Yeah.
it's just because you're following a script and you're asking questions. What so many of you do is you have these long, protracted, ridiculous, fake relationship building scripts. And I see some of these. I hear them. It is agonizing. Don't do that. Use our scripts because the buyer does not want you as a friend. The seller does not necessarily want you as a friend. They're hiring you to solve a problem for them. And the reason that you're fake friending people is because you don't feel confident because you don't have a good script. Remember, knowledge equals confidence, ignorance equals fear. If you had a great script, which is nothing other than a conversation outline, you're going to get at the root of what's really motivating or not motivating that prospective client. And then you're going to be, frankly, cherry picking which ones you're going to actually want to work with.
That's right. Well, scripts are just questions, right?
That's it.
So that's why we're talking about negotiation checklist questions. Now, the last one for the buyer is this. What is their actual financial limitation? This is where a big mistake happens. We did a podcast with this being one of the big mistakes. Can the borrower handle an appraisal gap or a bidding war? And if you are signing them up for that, what is the limit to their funds? Are you using a buyer's net sheet? Another thing you get in Premier Coaching. So for example, if you're in a competitive situation and the borrower's like, yes, I'm a 10, this is the house for me. I'll do an escalation clause. I will beat the other offer's best offer I'll go over $1,000 over the best other offer. Okay, up to what limit? And are you dipping into your down payment for that? Do you have enough funds to handle both? Because if you don't know the answer to this one, you're in danger of getting your buyer into contract with something they can't actually financially handle.
Well, I mean, but Julie, even more than that, along the same point, it should almost be a sub point, is you're going to, and we talked about this yesterday, we talk about this frequently because this is going to be one of the ways you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Well, the ultimate way you differentiate yourself in the marketplace is you're transactional. Last year, 71% of all licensees didn't sell a house, or rather, all members of the National Association of Realtors didn't sell a house, 71%.
Not a single house.
Not a single house. But for example, when you're in that, just using Julie's last point, if you're working with a buyer and you now know all their ups and the downs and the limits of what their ability to buy is, well, what if you know how to actually ask the seller in the process of negotiating for a contract how to pay for the buyer's closing costs, or how to pay for the the seller, the house is listed for $500,000. Your buyer is going to write an offer for $515,000, assuming the house appraises, which it probably will. It's only $15,000. The seller then agrees to basically essentially credit the buyer $15,000 at closing to buy down their interest rate. Buy down. You guys get this? There's more levels to negotiation, and there's more levels to winning in a competitive market like this than just price and closing date.
That's right, which leads us to our conclusion. We're going to talk not about all of these points, but how to actually put the deal together so that it's an acceptable outcome for all parties. Remember, that's the definition of negotiating. How to close the deal without killing it before you get to the finish line. Okay, so here's something I see agents doing mistakes with. Number one is always counteroffer. Never flat out reject an offer. Keep the conversation going, even if you seem to be absurdly apart to start.
Okay, so let's give them some coaching on this.
Yes.
All right, so you have a house listed, and it's your listing. Congratulations, right? The buyer's agent writes an offer that pisses your seller off, right? It's a low offer. They're asking just whatever it is.
Let's just reject it.
And the seller just, ego, big old damn mess. The worst thing you can do is pile on along with that seller, because I got news for you, kiddos. That may have been very well the best offer that seller is going to see. Now, here's what you say. When you get an offer that's an offer that pisses your seller off, You need to show emotion without being emotional, and don't get sucked into the vortex. Inexperience will cause you to feel their emotion. They're not paying you to feel their emotion. They're paying you to hear their emotion, not absorb their emotion, and help them move back to logic so they can get the contract together. So, Mr. Seller, listen, I hate this for you. I hate that you received this offer and then it's lower. And, here's the thing. This is the 14th showing we've had on this property, or 4th, or doesn't matter what. And I don't want you to be mad at the guy that wrote the offer. If we're going to be mad at somebody, let's be mad at the people that came through the house and actually didn't write an offer. This buyer, even though they did write an offer that I agree 100% is not acceptable, at least they took the time to negotiate.
They're trying to buy your house.
They are. They liked your house enough. They appreciated. I know everybody else made fun of the avocado wallpaper and the burnt orange shag carpet, but this particular buyer, turns out that they love that stuff. And so, this is the buyer we're going to, let's at least, I realize the offer was half off what you're asking. And they wanted your pool table, and they wanted your Velvet Elvis pictures, all the things, right? But you're going to, as opposed to just telling these people to, go away, we're going to negotiate with them. So I'm going to find out what's going on with their motivation. I'm going to call the buyer's agent, and then we're going to put an offer together. And then in Premier Coaching, we teach you the whole process. Because what happens is an inexperienced buyer's agent, and this also can happen on the seller side too, but an inexperienced buyer's agent, or an inexperienced buyer for that matter, they don't know that making offers that are, like, I'll give you guys an example. In Puerto Rico, where we live, when a listing goes, on the market, for the most part, the Puerto Ricans, the price is the price. They don't really negotiate.
What do you mean negotiate?
They're not going to negotiate. And if you try to negotiate more than a little bit, they're just not going to respond. They're just ghost you. Now, yes, that does have to do with, weak listing agents for sure. But just saying culturally, that's going to be the expectation. Sometimes you're just dealing with people from different parts of the world or have different expectations, and they negotiate on every damn thing. They're walking up to Starbucks ordering a latte, and they're going to negotiate on the frickin' price. Okay, some people are just like that. So you've got to not allow yourself to lose a deal just because your seller's pissed off. But the way you make it so the seller doesn't get pissed off at you and then direct the low offer as a negative towards you and maybe fire you is you have to say, Mr. Seller, listen, I really hate the fact that you received this offer that was like this. And then use the script I gave you and reel it back in. And let's just do this. The house is listed for, $500,000. The offer came in at $250,000. It's absolutely disgustingly too low. But Mr. Seller, let me ask you a question. If I went back to this buyer and remember they offered $250,000 and we got them to raise their offer to say $275,000. And remember the seller's listed at $500,000. Mr. Seller, I know, that's obviously nowhere close to our asking price, but if they renegotiated us and they started at $275,000, what would you tell me? And they're, that's absolutely too low. I would never consider that. You know what, Mr. Seller, I 100% agree. But if I were to get them up as a starting point to say, for example, $350,000, $375,000, is that a good starting point? Would you at least consider something like that? Well, yes, let's just, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and counteroffer for $399. Remember the original list price was $500, but the seller just conceded that they would be willing to take less because what may have happened while you had the house listed, the seller may have become more motivated or the seller might just be done with it. You guys don't make the mistake of assuming the most important thing to a seller is the price. It rarely is.
Which is my second point.
Okay, good. Go for it.
Good segue. Yes. Now, let me rewind them for a second. The important part of when the script that you just went through, and some of you guys listening on the podcast might want to rewind that.
Well, don't rewind it. Just join Premier Coaching.
Right, exactly.
And get the clean version.
Get the clean version.
That's written down so you guys don't try to patchwork quilt together what I just said.
Yeah. Now, you said, would you at least consider? You didn't say, would you take it? You said, would you consider it, which keeps the conversation going, right? That's a key scripting point. We can't do all of this on the podcast, but we do it in Premier Coaching. Now, that led us to what you just said. Price isn't everything. Closing date, possession terms, contingencies. Sometimes that's more important than price. So in every case, but especially when you're presenting something that's less than the seller would want, which is, if we're being honest, virtually all the time, even if it's full list, right? Make sure that you present the things that they are getting, that is on their side, that the buyer is giving them, the possession date they want, the closing date they want, they get to take their pool table, whatever. These are the 5 things that you are getting, and then it makes it easier when you present the price, which isn't exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. And again, none of this will work. All of this will fail unless you absolutely have used the pre-qualification script in this particular example. Now we're talking about sellers a little bit. You know the seller's motivation. You know the seller's time frame. You know if the seller has any debt of, you know what the seller owes on the house. You know if the seller's got any legal problems, any relocation issues, whether they're in contract to close on something else. You know all the things. You have to know every damn thing, because when you're negotiating, sometimes the sellers are going to get emotional, well, like all the time, because sellers don't negotiate for a living, and they are not emotionally equipped to deal with big decisions that involve big numbers. And so it makes them very nervous. And sometimes they're going to forget that they had a mechanics lien on the property. They're going to forget that they still owe the roofer, $50,000. They're not doing it maliciously. It's because they're under stress and they're just not remembering. It's your job to know all the things about your client so that you can protect them. Otherwise, they will blame you for not actually having figured that, $50,000 roof that's a lien against the house into their net sheet. You guys following me on all this? That's the reason you have to follow a damn system. That's what the pre-qualification scripts are all about.
Yeah, so our next thing is to look for solutions, not for fights. Use scripts like, help me understand where your client's coming from, or what would happen if we did this? How can we meet somewhere in the middle, instead of just getting into it with other agents? I should have had a section on here called Get to Know the Other Agent. Like, is this their first deal and you just need to be a good coach to them?
And again, guess what? You can search the MLS, search their MLS number, see if they've done any transactions, see if they've done any transactions in your particular price range. And if they've only sold townhomes in the city and they're now making an offer on a country property, chances are they're not really going to know about the well and septic reports and all the other things and the gas line easements. You're going to probably have to do a little bit more work on that to help that deal stay together.
That's right. We would occasionally have agents that were fairly far out of town that would come in and inevitably send in lower offers because they just didn't know the comps and the nature of the neighborhood.
Well, where they were selling real estate, you negotiated by offering 20% off list.
But yeah, because their stuff it was out in the country, it had massive days on the market, and they were used to coming down like that.
Well, we did a ton of relo, especially when we were in New Albany. That's probably what all of our clients were. And they would be coming from, in New Albany, you actually could negotiate, right? And so what happened is some of these guys would come from, say, California or New York City, where the markets were super hot.
Yep.
And they were not, they didn't realize they could negotiate.
Yeah, it could go that way too.
It could go that way, yeah. So you guys got to, really open your minds to how you can actually, yes, you think you're a great negotiator, every agent does, but as you start to hear it, hopefully we're exposing your mind to the realization that there's negotiation like you think, and there's negotiation like what a true high-level professional knows to do. And when you can show the seller or the buyer that you're operating at a different level than maybe they've ever seen before when it comes to negotiation, that's the brand that you want to build, because they're going to remember that experience. And they will tell all their friends and their family about this amazing job that Julie did that was so far beyond the other 10 previous agents they've used in their lifetime.
Yes, very well said. And so my last point, and you can get the rest of the points from the notes, is to be kind to each other. Okay. So for example, if you are dealing with a new or newer agent, even if they're a little combative, you've got to help them out. And one of my points that I wrote down here was use video to humanize the deal whenever possible. You can create a video from you that helps them present to their seller. Let's say, there's a lot of cases of this where the agent is not in control of their client. Okay. The client is like, do this, do this, do this. And they're missing that communication. I've had lots of coaching clients put together, like, here is the reason. It may look like we're coming in low, but let me explain, and they'll talk on video about, here are the last 3 comps that we have. Here's where our buyer's coming from. Here, please, take our offer seriously. Here's where we're coming from. You can help each other out. I think that there are deals that die or don't get off the ground floor because it's an agent-to-agent miscommunication or over combative nature. It's getting lost in translation, stuff like that.
Okay, so let's add to this, because
Sure.
now we're not quite at a half hour, so we can give some more specifics.
Sure.
All right, so let's say you're, let me think about this. Let's say you're a listing agent, and you like where Julie and I sold real estate in New Albany for the last part of our careers. And we would have a lot of agents, and we were doing, when we had to get listings that were mostly relocation. The people were moving out. We'd get the listings as they were moving out of town. We'd then work with relo buyers, the whole thing. But most of the buyer agents that were representing buyers in this particular marketplace had never sold in that price range, had gotten the lead from the relo company that, and a lot of them were very inexperienced, newer agents. And so if you looked in the MLS, you'd see most of the listings were done by like 3 or 4 agents, but most of the buyer sides, if they weren't being double-ended by those same listing agents, they're done by just this big shotgun scatter of different agents from all over God's green earth, because again, that's how Relo, generally speaking, that's how it worked. Okay, so follow me on this. And so when we get an offer from one of these buyer's agents, and we'd check in their MLS number, we'd see they never sold real estate before, we'd see that their a brokerage is clear across town. So we're dealing with somebody that doesn't know the marketplace. What we'd often do, and I would say 9 times out of 10, the buyer's agents actually appreciate it, is we would ask to present the seller's counteroffer to the prospective, there directly to their buyer. We would actually ask formally to present. Now, you can do that on the other side too. As a buyer's agent, if you're dealing with a buyer that, again, this will be maybe, you guys have to just adjust accordingly with what I'm saying. You can ask the listing agent to present the offer on behalf of your buyer directly to their seller. And sometimes the agents, if they're inexperienced, they're going to have big ego ruffle ups. Sometimes, frankly, the listing agent's going to have more of a relationship with the seller, so they're going to be able to do a better job than you. But now I'm going to give you guys a third level to this. And this is something, again, these are the types of things we teach you in Premier Coaching. I want you to imagine that you're a listing agent. And you've had this listing for a while. It's getting consistent showings from one particular agent. And you know the agent is showing the property the same time or to the same set of buyers. So you've seen this buyer's agent show this property, your listing, to these particular buyers 3 or 4 times. And you're saying, what the hell is going on? This buyer agent obviously doesn't know what they're doing.
Where's my offer?
Okay, well, they might not know what they're doing, or the buyer doesn't know necessarily what they're doing. It just basically, you need to actually intercede and make this deal happen on behalf of your seller. So what we want you to do, and we teach you to do this in Premier Coaching, is we want you to write, normally you'd write a buyer's offer to purchase, right? It's called a purchase contract. We want you to write a seller's offer to sell. So you're going to actually write, as a listing agent, obviously with your seller's consent, you're going to write an offer from the seller, and you're going to send it to that buyer's agent, and you're going to say, our seller would like to sell this property to you, to your buyers, because they obviously like it. Here's the price, condition, location, and closing terms.
It gets the ball rolling.
That's what it's doing. It's making it so the buyer agent now, maybe they're working with someone that they're friends with and they're afraid to feel like they're pressuring them.
They're afraid to ask to close.
Whatever it is. And so what you're doing is you're pushing the conversation into the end zone to the benefit of all parties concerned. They might not respond, or as Julie just said, you've just essentially forced a conversation to happen between that buyer's agent and their buyers. And that buyer's agent is going to love you for having done it, because they obviously weren't able to do it. And what would the offer be? Probably what the terms are in the MLS, the list price.
It's a starting point.
It's a starting point. Okay, so that's how you guys got to think. So when it comes to negotiation and you have all these different arrows in your quiver and you know how to solve all these different types of problems, you're going to be able to make a lot more money, and a lot of times put deals together that other agents won't even, solutions they won't even be able to fathom, because you actually know how to truly negotiate.
That's right. And did you know that some boards actually have that form, what you just described is called seller's offer to buyer, pre-written, done by their attorneys? You just have to go find it. I know in Texas on Trek, you could just search by the form online. You fill it out, and you're literally doing an offer from the seller to the buyer. You're helping them along. And you made a great point. When they've seen the house 3 or 4 times, what is the deal, right? So are we going to wait for 5 or 6 times and that buyer's agent to keep on, torturing your seller?
What ultimately happens is that those buyers will fire that buyer's agent or start ghosting them.
They may go to the listing agent.
And might go to the listing agent directly anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't want to wait around for that, honestly.
No, and you want to do a great job for your sellers. So, I know that over the past 2 podcasts, we've talked about some more advanced, more kind of twist and turn negotiation techniques. That is fairly common in a more normal market. I know many of you have never heard of this stuff before.
But why are we doing this? Because last year, 71% of all members of the National Association of Realtors didn't sell a house. And I got news for you. It's not because they didn't have enough TikTok videos. It's not because their branding wasn't good enough or their logo wasn't perfect.
And it's not because nothing sold. There were more than 4 million sales.
Well, 4 million sales means that there were 8 million sides, and that's not including new construction. With new construction, they're probably closer to 10 million sides. The average commission was probably $10,000. So you're talking about 10,000 transactions most likely at an average of $10,000. You guys can do the math. And yet there were 71% of the agents that didn't do a deal. Why didn't they do a deal? Because they didn't know how to put deals together. Deals have gotten more complex. Knowing how to negotiate is it's the easiest thing to be overly confident about. And you don't know what you don't know until you lose a deal. And then you see that same seller, it's your seller. The listing expires on you. You blame the seller. Oh, they just weren't, whatever, seller's problem. I didn't do anything wrong. They were mean. They were, they weren't willing to whatever. And then the house expires. Somebody else picks up the listing and the house goes in contract in a week at the same price you had it listed for. And you have no one to blame but yourself because you didn't have the skill set to put that deal together. And I want you guys to beat yourself up on this a little bit before you actually have to lose money to realize what we've been telling you the past 2 days is absolutely true. This is the type of advanced coaching and training. This is just skimming the surface of what you get in Premier Coaching. We want you to realize the potential you have from the knowledge that you can gain. Look, we know your 3 biggest challenges in real estate are lead generation, and we call it sales skills. Some of you guys want to call it systems. That's fine. And the last thing is really branding and what's going to differentiate you in the marketplace. So like everyone, consumers, right or wrong, assume all agents are the same, right? And you are constantly fighting against that. How do I make myself stand out in a crowd? That's what Premier Coaching is. Premier Coaching is helping you lead generate. Premier Coaching is helping you have the skills to actually get the deals in contract. And Premier Coaching is helping you to establish a long-term brand, which, by the way, is based on your success from helping other people, not from fakey doing it with a bunch of social media, but actually having been successful. Those are the 3 tenets of Premier Coaching. So you can join Premier Coaching right now for free. Go to premiercoaching.com. The link to join is down below in the show description. Or like I said, you can just go to premiercoaching.com. You get 30-day free access for Premier Coaching. Look, you can go and buy more leads. You can go and buy more branding. But what difference does it make unless you have actually the skill set to put the deals together? And we just gave you for the last 2 days a very, very brief overview of the intensity that's involved in Premier Coaching. Look, you guys can go and do, you can say, like I know some of you are listening, I want to join Premier Coaching. This is definitely what I need to take my business and personal life to the next level. But I need leads. Well, guess what? We teach you how to lead generate in Premier Coaching. And I'd say probably realistically 80% of the things we're going to teach you to do in Premier Coaching for lead generation won't cost you a damn thing. Okay? So lead generation is the thing that you guys are most tempted to want to invest in. Well, we're going to give you lead generation as part of Premier Coaching. And most of the things we're going to ask you to do for lead generation won't cost you anything. So that problem is solved with Premier Coaching. And then we're going to show you the skills. We're going to give the scripts, the objection handlers, all the pre-listing packs, the pre-buyer packs, marketing and branding. If you want to build your team, all those things are there. And then you're going to want to know how to actually position yourself in the marketplace so that people see you for the professional that you're striving to be. You've actually created a really incredible brand that can last decades. We're going to teach you how to do that in Premier Coaching. We've done it hundreds of thousands of times for other real estate agents over the last 20 plus years. Now is your time. Join premiercoaching.com or frankly, just click the link below in today's show description.
One of the things that I like the most about that program is that they get live daily help from our Harris certified coaches. So let's say that you get into one of these deals. We've been talking about negotiation for the past 2 podcasts, and you're so close, but you're at a standoff between you, the other agent, the buyer, the seller. You're not sure how to put this deal together, and you're desperate for a solution. You go to your live Premier Coaching call, and you ask one of our Harris certified coaches. You go through, your bullet points. This is what happened. Please help me. Give me a script. Help me save the deal. And the other agents that are on that coaching session are going to learn something. Maybe you haven't dealt with that yet, but you're going to go, oh my God, what would I have done in that situation? I'm so glad that I heard that because I'm probably going to deal with that this weekend with my buyer.
So look, we could talk about it forever. Premier Coaching is a culmination of all of the things that we've learned from all the coaching calls, from all of our literally, it's like 26 years in the real estate coaching and training space. It's something that we know is your complete A to Z solution. If you want to be, frankly, the part of the 30% that's actually transactional, you got to be thinking bigger than obviously the 71% of agents that didn't sell a single house last year. And so what did they get sucked in? The endless Facebook groups where they're always looking for the last, the greatest shiny object What should I be spending my money on? Do a Facebook ad, do all these TikTok videos. You guys you're losing your ability. You're losing your potential by focusing on the things that are just the shiny object ideas. Some of these coaching programs you guys join, they'll give you this long list of videos you're supposed to create. And you create all these videos and you're going to make yourself the mayor of your town. And then you're going to have all these people rushing to your door. And, so Mr. Coach, did you ever sell real estate before? No. So how do you know if these things work or not? Well, I guess I don't really because, I never sold real estate before. Why are you listening to that person? Listener, I'm asking you. You guys need to start being very, very particular about who you're taking advice from, who you're actually assuming knows what the hell they're talking about, because there's a big difference between sounding confident and being competent, right? You guys are seduced by people that sound confident, but they're not competent. You guys get the difference? So Julie and I are confident because we know we're competent. What a lot of the folks that you guys are seemingly attracted to, and I don't like sounding like this, but I want to save you from having made this mistake. And every year, by the way, the percent of agents that's non-transactional increases. It's not decreasing. It's because there's so many people that are grifters that are in the real estate space that are marketing and advertising, branding folks who sound confident. That's an F, confident, but they're not competent to basically be teaching agents how to generate leads, let alone be successful in real estate. There's a difference, and you have to start learning that difference. Otherwise, you're not going to sell anything, and you might not stay in the real estate business.
And we don't want that to happen to you because we know that you're better than that. We know that you want it. We know that you're motivated. Our job is to educate you and motivate you, keep you motivated. But your job is now to get into action, so you know what to do.
All right, you guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.